Talking Joe is on the air.
And it's Skybound, the Walking Dead guy. Everyone calm down. It's the invincible fella Skybound. Hey, it's me, Mark, and welcome to Void Arrival, the show where we are looking at Skybound's new Void Rival comic. Now, if you're new to the show, you can find out all of the details over at the website. talkingjoe.co.uk is the website with all of those details. Now, today we are looking at Void Rivals issue 1, which was released by Skybound 14th of June 2023. Distant future. It's the launchpad of the Hasbro Energon Universe, and it's the new home of G.I. Joe, Skybound. So looking at this, I will not be doing it alone. I'll be joined by my co-host, as always. It's Tim Finn.
Hello, Mark, and hello, listeners and viewers.
There you are. Hello, Tim. How are you?
I'm well. Who's our guest?
Well, today we will be joined by a special guest. You may know him from such guides as After Action Report, Volume 1 and Volume 2, a constant by the side of my desk. It is Josh, After Action Report, Eggebeen.
Hello, everybody. Yo, Joe.
Hey, Josh. Good to see you, and this time it looks like you are indoors in a G.I. Joe themed room. Last time I spoke to you on one of these, you were sitting outside in a park somewhere.
Yep. I was unable to be at home at that time, but I'm home now. This is my little setup. You guys can find the Easter eggs that I put in the background. But yeah, we're here to talk about Void Rivals. I mean, it's crossover time now. Hasbro's diving deep into crossovers.
Absolutely. Let's now. It's a bit of a tradition, I guess, when we have someone new in their G.I. Joe room. Give us a little bit of highlights of your G.I. Joe space that you've got there, Josh.
So this is just a corner of my place, but and you see I got R2 in a little light. But I got some cool things, from the different publishers. That's Dutch. There's new from France. And then up here, Brian Shear book, Patty's poster, a Marvel Treasury edition, and of course, some Star Wars stuff. And then we have those. This is just one corner. The rest of my house is kind of a mess. But as you can see, I got a bunch of boxes over there. So... When you make books about comics, you have to pull out all the comics, and then after a while it kind of gets accumulated where you don't put them all back. So I just have that's just like a couple boxes. I can't even show you the other room. My comic vault is what I call it. But I should have been a little more prepared to show you that. But that's just a sampling of my life over here with G.I. Joe comics. But yeah, Volume 3 is pretty much almost done and going to go to the printer. Command Files, which is a character guidebook, the same thing. We have a Kickstarter going for the second printing newsstand edition, which our first volume, which Mark showed earlier, because we almost sold out and there's a bunch of errors. Mm-hmm. And so that's about what's happening with After Action Report books. And we got a bunch more in the future, but we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about Transformers and G.I. Joe and those two franchises. They're little small franchises.
Yeah. So where to begin? Should we talk about a little bit? So last week I had a big deep dive with Chris McLeod. So me and Chris talked at length about the long history of the journey to Skybound, starting with the rumors that IDW might be losing its license at the end, and when the news broke about that at the back end of 2021. So we won't get too much into the detail of how we got to today. but yeah, let's maybe just spend a bit of time about kind of our reaction to the news as it broke about the launch of this sort of mysterious stealth launch of this new Energon Universe via Skybound. Tim, why don't we start with your reaction? A lot of retailers got early insight as to what was happening with secret sort of teleconferences from the head honcho at Skybound. Were you privy to some of that in the run up to the launch?
No. Once a year, a comic book store near me hosts a Saturday night trivia event for local comic book stores. And because of the pandemic, they hadn't done it in a couple years. So I'm at the friendly competition a month ago, 5 weeks ago, 6 weeks ago. And another store owner says to me, "Did you get the 1 in 100 cover for Void Rivals 1?" And I said, "No." And he said, "It's got a Transformer on it." I said, "What?" So in Diamond Previews, this big catalog that we get every month, and for many years, stores were ordering from all the publishers, and Marvel's gone elsewhere, and DC's gone elsewhere. Image is about to go elsewhere. So 2 months ago, 3 months ago, I was flipping through previews, and I saw Void Rivals issue 1 in the Image section, and it said, the biggest launch of the year, the beginning of a surprise, the beginning of a shared universe, the ending you never saw coming. And it's the writer Robert Kirkman and the artist Lorenzo Di Felici of Oblivion Song, which is another Skybound book that I haven't read. One of my employees has. He says it's great. And I thought maybe it's connected to that. If it's a shared universe, that series ended. So maybe it's a big deal that he's sort of continuing it or going back to it, or maybe this connects. It wouldn't be connected to Walking Dead. Maybe it's connected to Invincible. There was that sort of what if Walking Dead in the future story called Rick Grimes 2000, which serialized in I think it was just the Skybound anthology like 2 years ago. But it did not occur to me that this was G.I. Joe and Transformers, because nothing about this cover to me says G.I. Joe Transformers. And, certainly the EU for Energon Universe and the Transformers font was not on the cover in the catalog. And so, so as a retailer, I'm embarrassed that I missed that. Wherever the message was in an email or some kind of newsletter that like Skybound was communicating with store owners, and in the newsletter before the comic came out, Skybound said a Transformer will be in this book or on the 1 in 100 variant cover, and this is the beginning of the shared universe. But it's a secret, don't tell. I did not get that, and I get 4 emails a day in my like business email that's separate from the store email from publishers and distributors and writers and artists like hyping upcoming books, and I don't subscribe to like the weekly or monthly Skybound email, and maybe it was there. And when this other store owner asked me this question at this trivia event at another comic book store, we had missed the final order cutoff. So we could still order copies of regular cover issue 1 if they were available, even though the book hadn't come out yet. But we could no longer order any of the tiered variants. So I missed it. We did order some copies, but I missed it. So, but I was at other store owner explaining it to me. The trivia event was about to start, and I was sort of flustered and enchanted and really embarrassed. Like, wait, what? What did I miss? Am I do I not pay attention, store owner? But it wasn't entirely clear to me that this was G.I. Joe and Transformers. And it still didn't quite make sense that Kirkman would be doing creator-owned characters or characters he created in a Hasbro book. It sort of didn't. People were talking about it at Joe Fest, and then it sort of didn't fully crystallize until people were saying at Joe Fest, yeah, stores have already been getting their copies early. People have looked at it. It refers to these upcoming books. Joe Fest was a Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I got home Sunday
Right.
night. I went to the store Tuesday night. We had our shipment already. I took the book home and read it, and I was a very happy kid again with the reveal and with the announcement at the end. So that's my very long answer.
I saw the solicits when it came out, and it was like talking about the launch of this new universe and crossovers, and a very secretive incentive cover that they wouldn't reveal the image for. And I was sort of like, could it be something? Could there be something on that, that cover that's so secret because it's something to do with the Hasbro universe? And I was like, that's really audacious. Could it be that? And I was minded to actually go, to add it onto my pull list just in case before the news hit. But I was still like sort of 50-50. I mean, it's like such an audacious plan. I was like, could they really do that? So I was very suspicious, but not completely kind of there. Josh, what when did you find out, and how did you take the kind of the reveal when you found out about it?
So obviously, just being a collector and not, I got a pull list on a comic shop that I've had for 20 years in California, but there's no Joe coming out, so there's nothing on my pull list. So at Joe Fest with Tim, actually, it just all of a sudden popped up out of nowhere. Everybody's like, "Did you know this?" And of course, as a comic guy, it's all filling my email and Facebook and everything. And so then I went right on eBay right away, and I was looking through all this stuff. I was like, oh, and the 1 in 100 was listed for $100. Buy it now. So I hit buy it now right there on the spot at Joe Fest, and it turned out to be it's already worth like $200-$400. So, and that's this one right here. So that's basically, oh, there we go. And I got some of the other ones, so I guess I'm one of the lucky ones that got in and on it early on the day it was released. And the guy who I bought it from, the cover actually said redacted because they hadn't released the cover image, but he was selling the 1 in 100. And so then after I bought it and they released it, I had to message him and say, "Is it the one with Jetfire on the cover?" And he's like, "Yep." Yeah. So that's basically, and then I bought a bunch more. I went to a bunch of comic shops. I live in Moab, Utah, so I flew back from Joe Fest, and on that Wednesday after Joe Fest is when the comic came out. So I just decided to go visit a bunch of. Yep, there's the cover. That's that 1 in 100. So it's regularly selling on eBay now for $250 to $300. And my guess is those are all going into collections. Those aren't flippers, so they're not coming out. But yeah. So then when I got back from Joe Fest, I was in Salt Lake City, and it was Wednesday. I was like, I'm going on a tour of comic shops, and I went to like 5 comic shops as I made my way home, and I just bought them all. I would literally buy out all that they had there. And so I got like 10 or 15 number ones or whatever. I don't know. So I just bought them all. I got a whole bunch of the blank covered ones now. And I'm like, but like there was only a couple of them when I asked them said that they had ordered 100. Most of them missed it. I think, there's obviously some of the bigger shops, but I think most small comic shops, missed the whole 1 in 100. But so it's pretty exciting.
I also think it's worth pointing out. I think if you are a collector of like a narrow band of books, if you only buy Transformers books, or you only buy X-Men books, or you only buy a Red Sonja, or if you're like a G.I. Joe toy fan who follows the comics sometimes, I think it can be easy to miss just how many variants there are. And if you are a collector who pays attention to everything, even if you don't buy everything, or if you're a store owner, everyone, let me tell you, we are inundated with covers. So between previews, Marvel previews, and DC has a catalog, which is called DC Connect, which is basically DC previews. Every single DC comic every month has at least 2 covers, most of them have 4 or 5. And when Marvel does a new number one, every year and a half or 2 years, Marvel relaunches like Amazing Spider-Man or Thor or Hulk, or if there's like a new sort of big deal Star Wars book that's not like a mini series, Marvel will do 15 or 20 covers. And Dynamite has been doing like 20, 30 covers for some of its books. And like if you paid attention to Ninja Turtles Last Ronin or Snake Eyes Dead Game, those first issues had cover galleries on like the last page and the inside back cover. And those had
I'll say that's an IDW thing. I don't really think cover galleries is any of the other companies, right?
Correct. But what I'm getting at is that like as a Transformers and G.I. Joe fan, who owns a store, yes, I'm a little embarrassed that I missed the boat on this. We don't have any customers who were angry at us or who pre-ordered 100 copies so they could buy the 1 in 100. My store is not a variant store. In fact, kind of the only person at my store who buys variants is this guy. And that was like Real American Hero for the 1 in 10s, but like I wasn't doing it with sort of the Transformers books that were running 3 years ago, 2 years ago, and that was because I was buying a lot of we're buying a lot of G.I. Joe, Larry Hama G.I. Joe anyway. And so, but like if you're a store, if you do a ton of eBay, or you're, I don't know, like in a city and you have a ton of customers who are collectors, who are like Wednesday warriors, or who have 30, 50, 100 titles on their pull list, you might be doing a lot of this. Like, yep, we're gonna get a bunch. We're gonna get 300 copies, so we can get like 5 of the 50s and 3 of the 100s. And like DC has a couple times done in the last few years event books where it's like 1 in 1,000 or 1 in 1,500, and like. Wow. And, comics are not $3 anymore. Comics are $4. But actually, if you pay attention right now, like more and more Marvel and DC books are $5. And a first issue will sometimes be 6 or 7 because it's like double sized, or it has sketchbook pages. And like, man, I can't take that risk.
It's a big investment, definitely.
So I am sort of forgiving isn't quite. I'm understanding that. I think that, Josh, to your observation, that looks like a lot of stores missed out on the 1 in 100 because the publishers have been sort of training us to skip a lot of these variants because they're just too many.
Right.
And can I touch on a point that you made earlier, Tim? And this is a 2-part question. 1, did your store have enough copies of this comic, it being a number one from Kirkman, which would be a relatively popular comic anyway, and 2, had you known, would you have ordered a lot more?
Yes, we had enough we would have ordered more, not a ton more.
Okay.
My store is more of a graphic novel store and less of a single issue store. So we do have a new issue, this week section, and we do have subscribers, but we sell more graphic novels than we do new issues. We're really a bookstore, and it's a comic book store. We have issues, we have back issues, we sell bags and boards, but 60% of the store is graphic novels, and 25% of the store is issues. And I don't know that I would have gotten the 1 in 100 for myself because I am a big Transformers fan. But this isn't a Transformers book yet. This isn't a Transformers #1. If this was somehow Real American Hero 301, probably. Certainly the 50. I don't know about the 100.
Cool. We sort of touched on the massive amount of covers, so I feel that it's a good segue to start looking at the cover gallery. So let's get into
Let's
it.
have a look at the covers in the gallery.
So we've got a kind of cheat sheet, which was the, I guess this is the inside front cover, right? It gives us a view of some of the covers for the book. Not a huge amount of detail on those covers. We don't get a cover gallery, unfortunately, unlike IDW would give us. And I think I counted off from memory 11 or so covers on this list. So that's kind of the beginning of the scavenger hunt. And so Josh, you're the variant cover guy.
Just call me completist. I'm a completist. And if it has G.I. Joe in it, I have to get everything. So, which is why I've written books about it, because I already had a lot of it. But like, this is a perfect example of like, yeah, it's the beginning. It doesn't actually have any G.I. Joe, but it does have G.I. Joe in the back. It's beginning. So it falls into my category. I have to get every cover, and you know, that's the fun. That's for me. That's really the fun of collecting, is to try to get them all. Does my wallet like me? No, it hates me, but the collector in me loves me. It's like, go get them. So, but again,
yeah.
you know, like sometimes it pays off. You know, you get these comics for $100, and now it's a $300 comic. You know what I mean? So there is a huge value to it already. Regarding the inside cover there, right? So, like, I think what they just did was they just kind of listed from the top to the bottom of like A down to like covering the exclusives. So some of the names at the bottom are the exclusive, the retailer exclusives that they have. And I made my own list, and I think at the Daniel Warren Johnson one, that's the 1 in 100 with Mike Spicer, and then everything after that
right.
is an exclusive. And then after the Matthew Roberts one, and I guess the L one has not been released. You were just showing it to me earlier. I hadn't found that one. But then there's a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, including second prints that have been announced. So there's 6 more covers that aren't even listed there. But they're mostly like virgins and sketches and, you know, second prints and stuff like that. I have several of them already.
Josh, you've got some of your collection alongside you, so we'll go through the images that I've found, and you can tell me whether you've been able to locate them in person yet, or not. So here's the easy one. It's cover A, the standard issue, and I think we've got a spoiler already that you said you cleared out all of the local shops, and
yeah, I think I got like maybe
you've probably got a big pile
of
this somewhere.
Cover A's. I just went crazy. I was like, whatever, you know, buy them all.
So this is drawn and colored apparently by Lorenzo De Felici, who's the series artist of Void Rivals and who wrote and drew a miniseries this year for Skybound called Chroma. That's spelled with a K. That was 3 issues, and the book has come out. And now he's on to this shared universe book.
So I'm calling
good
out
to have.
cover A.
Yeah, it's great as well. You got your interior artist as being the cover A artist as well. So yeah. I think that's a nice thing to see.
Old-fashioned and proper.
Now we've got a thing on from that. This might not be the B, but thematically, I feel it follows on. This is the Virgin variant of cover A.
I just have a printout, but I have ordered it, so it's probably. I'm calling that one cover P, because you know, like you have to, as a collector and as an author of books, you know, you have to give them a designation, and if the company doesn't do it itself, it's like you got to do it your own.
Are you guys sure that this is actually going to be published, and that isn't just an image that was online without the logo?
I believe I ordered it online. I paid for it.
Okay, I don't see
some
it.
Guy in Ireland had them, so I don't know.
Maybe this is a retailer exclusive because I do not see it available on the Diamond website.
Yeah, I think it's a retailer.
A chunk. Yeah,
Okay.
a chunk of these are retailer. Mm-hmm.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So
Okay,
again,
so what have I got
when
up
you look
next? I think
on
this.
on the list on the inside cover, everything after the Daniel Warren Johnson one would be retailer exclusives of some form.
Right. Okay.
One other thing is that I know we're going to get to it, but the
So-
blank cover
on the
right,
screen now,
it
I've
actually
got.
is
Okay.
has the front issue. So if you get a blank one, it has a card stock cover, and then it is number 1 or
Yeah,
cover A.
the blank cover is not a restricted ratio variant. The blank
No.
cover was open to order, so stores could order as many as they wanted without doing anything else.
Okay, but like I said, it does have cover A on the inside.
Is part of why this is novel when we've gotten blank covers from like IDW for GI Joe in the last couple of years? Is it just the blank cover and there is no additional cover? That's the point you're making. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, like this is literally cardstock. I don't know. You can see maybe the difference a little bit. I don't know how much
because they know it's gonna.
But
they know it's gonna take ink.
Yeah, and it's just blank on the back.
All right, back to you, Mark.
The next one I stuck up on the screen is a black and white variant of the cover A.
Yes, I have found it. It arrived, and I'm calling it
There we go.
cover Q. I believe this one was like $16. I forget the company.
Think up next. This is probably the cover B.
Yes, this is cover
the
B.
official cover B.
This is drawn and colored by Ethan Young.
No, I'm not familiar with his work, but a lot of these covers, as we go through them, you'll see that they're quite similar in a lot of ways. There's a lot of crossover, and I don't think the artists necessarily had a huge amount to go on. I think they had like the design of the main characters and a few preview pictures. So you're kind of getting very similar things, like the two main characters on a rock, they're fighting. There's a space background, and I guess everything else is like, what else can I make up within those confines?
I'm going to jump back in. Ethan Young wrote and drew a graphic novel called Nanjing, The Burning City, which now that I see the title, I remember we have carried at my store, and I remember it looks great. It's from 2015 or 2016. Ethan Young's done other graphic novels. He's done variant covers for all the publishers that we talk about. And he was a character designer on Spider-Man Freshman Year, which is that cartoon that has yet to show up in Disney Plus, but was announced a couple years ago.
Next up, I think it's just the variant, the Virgin variant of that same cover, and we've got a printout again from Josh. So that means, Josh, that you've ordered it, but it's not on Found You yet.
So yeah, I just ordered it the other day, and I'm calling it cover N, and I ordered it from a place called Rabbit Comics. Never heard of it. I don't know if it's their exclusive or not, but I was able to get it from there, and it's on the way, and it's all confirmed saying, hey, it's coming. That's my handwriting up there in the top corner. Rabbit Comics. Yep. That's where I got it.
Unblemished by the logo. So this next one, I believe, is cover C. This is the Matteo Scalera and Moreno Dinicio. Is it Black Science he's famous for?
Yeah. And also some did some Secret Avengers at Marvel. Yes, that's a 1 in 10.
1 in 10. That one is easy to find. I think almost every shop that I went to when I did my scavenger hunt on the Wednesday when they had it. So I have like 4 or 5 of them now.
Another little point I want to make about variants is that even though I don't like playing the variant game as a store owner, IDW has always made it a little easier and a little more fun because variants were free once you qualified. So if I ordered 10 copies of G.I. Joe and I could get 1 copy of a 1 in 10 variant cover, I would order it. I'd have to put 1 as a quantity and add it to my shopping cart. but its price was $0.00. Whereas all the other publishers, if you order 10 copies, you have to buy the variant, and you're still buying it for like half price as wholesale. And this is a very small sort of detail if you're ordering hundreds and hundreds of comics and getting a couple of variants. But I always felt that IDW, even though I don't like the variant game, was sort of making it, was in the spirit of things, right? It's like, here's your reward for buying too many copies of this comic. You get the comic for free. All right, back to you guys.
Well, the thing I think with variant covers is that, in the future, when they don't put any information inside the comic about an alternate cover, then you're forced to go to, websites and all these other things. And like you really can't figure out how many covers there are per issue if it's not labeled on the inside. So Marvel and DC make it, like that, where it's not there. So you're like, how do I find this? Well, I got to go to some other website. And a lot of times, like even when I've gone to like Marvel's website, like they don't even always have the exclusive variants from retailer exclusives listed on there. And I'm like, well, how do you find these? You know what I mean? So then it becomes internet search, madness.
All right, what's the next cover, Mark?
Next up on the scavenger hunt is, I believe that we're now on D. So this must be Karen S. Darboe.
Yeah, Karen Darboe. If you're all
And
reading
Josh
Marvel comics,
has found that one as well. So
this is the one in 125.
Karen Darboe just drew a 5-issue miniseries from Marvel called Bloodline: Daughter of Blade. So she has worked for other publishers, I think, but most recently did a big thing at Marvel.
All right, next one, right? One in 150.
Next one. So this is the Jim Chung and Ray David Ramos. And I have seen a black and white version of that, but I think it is just the original art that Jim Chung has posted to his Instagram. So I don't think it's a variant cover, the black and white, but who knows? There might be one out there eventually. But this is where I got that insight, because he posted that he'd basically only seen the designs and some of the pages from the interior, and sort of used that to come up with his idea for this cover. So again, featuring the two main protagonist / antagonist question mark.
And this is one.
So you got 50. That one. Excellent stuff.
Yeah, this is
the one we've already talked about. The one in one.
Okay, now here's the
with, with Jetfire on the cover.
Dun, 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 dun. Daniel Warren Johnson and Mike Spicer. This was the one that Josh had to buy blind, and was the big reveal with Daniel Warren Johnson, of course, being the artist on the upcoming Transformers. So that's the
writer artist
piece
writer
to
artist.
The Transformer on the cover. He also writer artist, of course, and he also did this piece of art here, which was featured on the retailer poster, which sort of teased the Energon Universe. Oh, here's a question, Josh. Did you somehow get hold of the retailer poster?
Yes, I bought one. $25. Yeah, it's big too. It's a full-size poster. I was much bigger than I thought it would be. So yeah, it was just like, all right, well, I'm all in.
I assumed it was small.
So let me get the poster too.
All in.
Sometimes being a completist sucks.
Yes.
But it is fun. Okay, yeah.
Excellent.
So that one's the
stuff. So next up, here's one you don't have.
No,
this was one. It was shared on Instagram. One of Alex Reigel's sort of publishers, because he does his own book, I think. So one of his someone that he works with shared that, and I understand that might be something that comes out at SDCC. So look for it maybe a little later on.
That's one.
This
That was
month.
I have a big question mark on that one, so I hadn't been able to find that one. According to the list, the next one is Maria Wolf and Mike Spicer, and yeah, there you go. That's the next one. That's the Virgin cover, and then there's one with the logo. So this is just a printout of both of them. So you get the logo on the bottom, and then you get the Virgin. And then the next one,
and then the next one on the list is Trevong.
This one I found at a couple different retailers, so I'm not sure which one it was, but they're pretty easy to find, I think, when you just know the author, because that's how I did a lot of these searches to find these. The cover artist. I typed the cover artist in and Void Rivals. I mean, at this point now, there's hardly anything else out there other than these. So that's the key searches to find these. And then, it takes you to, they are on eBay too, but I find if you go right to the actual vendor, they're cheaper, maybe by $5 to $10.
They look like you got this one too.
Yep.
Is this Matthew Roberts, do you think?
See, I labeled it as H. No, it's Anson Lynn. It's right after the 1 in 100. So this one, I called it letter H.
Okay.
But
Ainsworth Lynn.
Ainsworth Lynn, yeah. And that was a retailer exclusive also. I think I got this one just on eBay. It was pretty easy to find.
And here we go. What's this this next one we've got? This one is a bit out there, isn't it? It's
That one I ordered from Eastside Comics. This has not arrived yet.
And I don't know if that's Matthew Roberts.
This is the Matthew Roberts one. Yeah, I wrote on the back Matthew Roberts. So that's the last one listed on in the inside interior page. I don't know.
And then I've got onto the second printings.
Second print. Okay. Yeah, there's two of those.
So this first one is second printing. Jason Howard.
I believe they said those are going to be released in July, probably around the time the second issue number 2 comes out. So
July 12th.
July 12th. Okay, great.
I have to say, so this second printing of issue 1 cover by the artist Mars Jr. This is a pastiche. This is a take on, what's the children's book? There's a monster in my book, or there's a monster at the end of my book.
Looks like a Sesame Street thing, right?
I think this is a really good drawing and a really fun cover and a really funny joke, because he's in front of this sign that's sort of making fun of or poking at the fact that there was this big reveal in this comic. But I don't think that this cover properly sells this comic, because this cover looks like a kid's book, and Josh is right. It looks like Sesame Street. And this is a, Void Rivals may be like rated PG and not PG-13, but it's a like serious and fun sci-fi book. And I think if this book were like 5 years old or 10 years old, and you wanted to do a cover that like looks like Dr. Seuss drew it, or looks like a Disney movie poster, it's like Jetfire and the 2 main characters on Pride Rock drawn like it's the Lion King. Like, that's fine, because everyone by then, 5 years later, 10 years later, knows what Void Rivals is. I think the fact that this book has been out on the stands for a week and in some places is sold out, as a store owner, I do not want to order this second print cover, because it's not at all what the book looks like on the inside. And I think it will turn people off. And I think it might attract the wrong people. Like maybe a parent and a kid wanders over to the new comics rack and they see whatever that word is up top of Void Rivals. It's like not a thing that we know what it is, right? And then there's this like delightful sort of children's book handwriting and this robot, and he's being whimsical. And that's not what this comic is. So that's a great drawing, way too early for this kind of cover.
Well, I mean, this is just to get the Transformers fans to buy more comics. I mean, you put a Transformer on the cover, Transformers fans are going to buy it, so that's the thing.
And you can kind of linger on that point as well, that this is now the second printing. The mystery has been revealed. We know that this is now the Energon Universe featuring Transformers, so they can go all in with Transformers as a solo character on the cover.
We know because we are crazy nerds. But as you would imagine a comic book store with one employee in the front and like the big new comics rack on the side or in the back, and like the parent goes to the back or kid goes to the back and they see this. And again, this is a cool drawing. This does not sell the inside of the book. And I don't think that's good. I'm going to use a big term here. I don't think that's good brand management. So I like this cover. I don't think this cover is a good cover for this comic at this time.
I think I think the
in
one
your grand
thing that
scavenger hunt, Josh, is there anything that I've not?
Yeah. So I don't think we covered this one. This one I have in hand, right? So it's the cover was at the cover B, that we were calling cover B. It's just a sketch. And like I said, I got this one in hand. I think I don't understand quite how the exclusives covers do this, where they don't. I guess they don't want to. Sometimes they have it on the back, but on the back, it doesn't have anything marking it as an exclusive. Sometimes the back covers can have exclusives. You know, it'll be like the logo of the company or something like that. And I didn't see that on any of them. So they just left the back cover as the same. All right. So that's all that I've found so far. It's been fun. You know, they're going to keep arriving for the next week or two, I think. There they all are.
Well, at the minimum, you can identify each cover by the artist's last name.
That's true. Yeah. Yeah. But you're trying to find these covers, like, you know, I think in the future, they're going to be very difficult to find, a lot of them, especially if they've only printed 1,000 and they're at some, you know, comic shop that maybe closes down, you know, like where do all those go? You know, you know, for volume 3 of the After Action Report for IDW, it was a huge challenge dealing with all the variants, way more than the other ones. So, you know, I you know, with comics in general printing less covers and more variants and things like that, like it's definitely going to be a challenge as a collector in the future. I feel sorry for them, but again, maybe websites can solve this problem.
Yeah, let's talk about the insides, and hopefully for issue 2, for issue 2, the number of covers will calm down slightly, because I do worry for Josh's wallet.
Oh yeah, my wallet.
We shall see.
Totally hates me. Totally hates me.
Right, Tim. Who are the people behind this book?
Robert Kirkman's the writer. Lorenzo Del Felice is the artist. Mateus Lopez is the colorist, and Russ Wooten is letterer. Editor Bixie Matthew, Andre Suarez, logo and publication design, and Jillian Crabb, production.
Plot breakdown.
Darak is a masked Agorian pilot who crash lands his ship on a planet in an uncharted quadrant following a confrontation with a Zertonian ship. His robotic hand assistant, Handroid, breaks him free and is able to revive him from his unconscious state. He encounters Celia, the pilot of the Zertonian ship, and they fight to a standstill, but Darak spares his opponent, which is something that is against the laws of his people. They decide to work together to use the wreckage of their 2 destroyed ships to make one working ship, but disaster strikes and the ship explodes. All seems lost until they happen upon a mysterious craft, but when they attempt to power it up, it transforms into a giant robot, the Cybertronian scientist Jetfire. He deduces that he's been stranded for millions of years, whereupon he transforms and flies away. Destination: home, Cybertron. Darak is inspired by the transformation to try to use their own armor to repair the ships. They both take their helmets off, breaking a sacred decree. And when they take off their helmets, they see that they are the same race, yellow-skinned, with jewels in their foreheads. Darak says mysteriously, "We're the same? Just like my vision?" Where to begin?
That was awesome, Mark. That was awesome. That really sums it up. Definitely, very well.
Thank you. I guess objectively, Transformers, Energon Universe aside, what did you think of this comic? I mean, plot, art, colors, paper quality, even, Tim, as a thing unto itself, without the prospect of a wider crossover. What did you think?
I thought this was a good first issue, where there was a Transformers surprise and the Kirkman letter at the end and the ads at the end with the larger reveal. I thought it was a great comic, but I am completely biased. I thought it was a good introduction to two new characters. My favorite parts of it are the color. Color's really nice, right? Notice how much pink there is in the first 3 pages, and then the pink gets darker, and then the scene where they find him is all yellow, and then after he transforms, there's a lot of blue and purple. So the color is really well done and compelling, but keeps changing somewhat scene by scene. Favorite part of this was the visual storytelling on pages 2 and 3, where how do you say his name? Derek?
I think it's Darak, because it's Darak, so it wouldn't.
Okay,
It's all A's, I think.
all right. So he's unconscious, and his handroid, which is a funny pun, right? Which I don't know that I've seen that in a story before, although I'm sure some people have thought of that in the last 100 years. Page 2, it's dragging him, and he's not conscious, and that's a really great visual, and it's told without dialogue explaining it or narration explaining it. And then the gag on the 3rd page, where it pushes the button for the first aid kit, the first aid kit launches and it says Drat, and then it has to drag him back in the other direction, and there's this curve in order for it to open up the first aid kit and shoot the guy with the medicine. That was really fun and really funny. I thought all the sound effects were gorgeous and fun, and I thought the introduction of this conflict with these two characters was well done. So my overall review of this is that it's 1 part Brian K. Vaughan, Fiona Staples saga, because it's a forbidden relationship between a man and a woman from 2 opposite sides of a war. Although I know that there's plenty that's very different about Saga and plenty we don't know about Void Rivals. And 1 part 1984 Transformers episode, Fire in the Sky, which introduces Jetfire when the Decepticons find him on Earth, crashed in the ice of the Arctic, unconscious, and they free him, and he has lost all of this time since he and Starscream left Cybertron millions of years ago, before the Autobots and Decepticons came to Earth, and they were separated, and he got stuck on Earth unconscious. And I'm assuming that that's on purpose. It seems like Kirkman is enough of a Transformers fan and is certainly the right age that he would have seen that episode in the fall of 1984, as I did. And that was the episode I most wanted to rent over and over on VHS at our video rental store. So that's a fun visual you just put up there. What I didn't realize for, I think, a year is that either someone lost the tape or someone broke the tape and they weren't replacing it, because every few weeks, every few months, I'd go to the kids section and this episode was always checked out. They had the empty box, but not like their clamshell with the actual tape. And I just couldn't get it. I just couldn't get it. And that the episode ends on a sad note. It's a really good episode of Transformers. And it's then undone a couple episodes later. But I love this episode so much that I bought the original artwork that you're looking at right now.
What?
For both the front and the back cover. And it's framed in my hallway. And every so often in my hallway, I just look up at it and I do the dialogue. I like read the comic out loud to myself, because it's like a 4-panel comic strip that summarizes the back of the VHS box that summarizes the first like 10 minutes of the episode.
That's hilarious.
This is one of my favorite episodes of Transformers. And I appreciate that Kirkman is separate from the whole surprise of this comic and the variants and the mystery. He doesn't have they don't crash land on Cybertron. Optimus Prime and Megatron don't show up, right? It's not one of the top tier characters here, and he's not here for very long. So it is a tease. So that is my reaction to this comic. Josh, what is your reaction to this comic?
So when after first reading it, I was like, man, there's two huge reveals in this book. The first being Jetfire, which you obviously covered really well, and then the second one is like, okay, he creates these two characters, and then at the end they take their helmets off and they're the same character. So it's like, and they have this little jewel in the middle of their head and they're yellow and everything like that. And so it's like, I was like, wow, that's a pretty clever twist for the end of a first issue, that and he, throughout the kind of the first few pages, he spent a lot of time really talking about like how these two worlds are connected, but and then at war, and then they have all these traditions, and then at the end, by the end of the first issue, they're kind of like both trapped and throwing out their tradition, and now maybe they're friends, and who knows, I don't know. But like, I thought that was really really clever to toss in Jetfire out of nowhere, and then for the two characters that are the whole point of the story and setting up a universe and a world, you set up that they're both of them are from different worlds and they don't really like each other, and they have these traditions, and yet they're both willing to throw out their traditions to save their own lives. And the guy just seems to like not really care about the traditions. In a lot of his dialogue, he's kind of like, well, I don't care, I want to live. I don't want to die here, and the girl's like, well, whatever. I want to follow their traditions, and I don't want to do this. But then he convinces her and keeps her alive, and she saves him. And I thought that was pretty clever. I mean, again, how do you set up a world, a shared universe with two massive franchises, and now Kirkman is creating his own franchise, so it's like 3 franchises. How do you do that? Well, I guess you just start with 2 characters. That's kind of what I came out of it thinking. And when at the end, when they took their helmets off, and I was like, wow, that's really cool. I was really quite surprised about that. I mean, I'm never very typical, I'm not critical of colors and artwork. I mean, I got thousands and thousands of G.I. Joe comic books, and I hardly ever make comments on it, because I'm usually more about the story. I like the story and more than the artwork and stuff like that. But that's pretty much wraps it up for me. What I thought, like the double reveals, and then it's who knows how long Void Rivals is actually going to run. I mean, the majority of people are going to want to buy the Transformers and G.I. Joe comics. So, is it going to be running for a long time? Maybe, maybe not.
Is that okay, Josh? That's an interesting assumption. The majority of people, certainly the majority of G.I. Joe and Transformers fans, but if you compare the sales of some of Kirkman's previous comics from the last 10 years, like Walking Dead or
Invincible,
or
Oblivion Ring.
Thank you, Oblivion Song. I think those were selling better than G.I. Joe and Transformers comics. So I take your point that Void Rivals may be sort of the kickoff of something, and it may end, and then Kirkman does like a mini series about one of the 2 planets, or like Derek or Dirac or the other character.
So Salula, I think her name is, something like that.
But look at
her name is Salula.
look at Kirkman's track record. How many issues did Invincible run? How many issues did Walking Dead run? I mean, Outcast and Oblivion Song didn't run as long as those books, but I don't think Void Rivals is here for 6 or 12 issues. I think it's here for at least 20 or 25. Of course, it all depends on.
I think there's an interesting thing going on here as well, because he's got these big licenses. He's got G.I. Joe, he's got Transformers, but what does he launch first? Void Rivals. So this new component. So he's introducing something brand new here, and as Transformers fans, as G.I. Joe fans, and also as Kirkman fans, they're more likely to buy this series to get in on the ground floor because Transformers and G.I. Joe aren't available yet. So we're getting this because it's what we've got and it's the beginning of things. And you know, if it's good and we enjoy it and we like it, then we're more likely to keep on buying it as an ongoing series. And I think the G.I. Joe Transformers sort of readership is quite often the readers that will just buy G.I. Joe or just buy Transformers. And by introducing us to this new property, we're maybe broadening the standard readership into something brand new.
So what was interesting about the weekend that Void Rivals appeared as a crossover is also the same weekend that Transformers Rise of the Beast came out with G.I. Joe, spoiler alert, at the very end with, you know, a card and everything. And also in the very next weekend, the Renegade Games released a whole crossover books that you can use for playing the games between their Transformers, Power Rangers, and G.I. Joe games. So clearly Hasbro has authorized and pushed the gas pedal on crossovers.
And there's, there's more. There's at the 3 3/4 scale, all we're getting at the most recent releases have been G.I. Joe Transformers crossovers, right. And even at classified scale, they're leaking into the narrative this idea of dark energon, they call it. So we're beginning to get seeds of Transformers even into classified. So across the pitch, it's G.I. Joe and Transformers.
Exactly, and I think, you know, there's a lot of people who are all like, oh, G.I. Joe's just fine, classified is sold a lot, but it's still just to us, the collectors, the 50-year-old guys with gray hair and cargo shorts, right? That's the main audience for G.I. Joe. But like these books will totally, and the in the movies will introduce beyond what the feature-length movies have done to, you know, a new audience. Is that going to translate into more toy sales and new fans? I think a few, yeah. But like by Hasbro investing like in this massive crossover over all kinds of things, right? They're not all connected. I mean, Void Rivals and the Renegade Games and the movie are all different universes, but they're still crossing over, and they did it all at the same time. You know what I mean? So I think that's really Hasbro's approach to help maybe save G.I. Joe, bring in new fans. We always talk about how, oh, there's this new thing that's going to bring in new fans, and it never brings in new fans. But now they're, you know, very likely could be. They'll be like, I'm going to read this book, and, oh, I like G.I. Joe because they never read G.I. Joe before. Or I see them in the movies, and they're kicking ass with Transformers. So I think that's really what Hasbro has consciously done. I mean, like, you know, whether we like it or not, that's our new world as Joe fans.
I have resisted this for a long time because I don't think G.I. Joe works as well when it's in a world with giant shape-shifting robots, autonomous intelligence for another planet where you have spaceships and space bridges. I think it doesn't work for G.I. Joe because G.I. Joe is pretty grounded, right? You have like soldiers and tanks that, you know, run out of gas, or, you know, like planes that have to traverse a great distance. And there's a little bit of a shorthand that you get when you have, you know, it's like Joe or Cobra may need to get from point A to point B. And it's like, well, we don't have enough fuel. And as soon as you have like Jetfire walk onto the panel, he may be low on energon, but it just suddenly feels very easy for him to do that. You know, he can take one step, and that's literally take one step with his legs. And, you know, that's 5 or 10 steps for Joe. And so I don't think they work together. I think G.I. Joe is strong enough to work on its own. That said, G.I. Joe is a diminished brand compared to where it was 10 years ago, 40 years ago. And if this is what sort of we need, or G.I. Joe needs now to get a leg up, I accept it, particularly since I think it will be well done. I don't know about the live action movies because I don't trust Lorenzo di Bonaventura to make.
I don't trust him at all.
I don't trust him to make good Transformers movies or.
And I worked on the very first movie, Rise of Cobras, so I actually met him in person. But that's a whole other story. But the thing that I was thinking would be cool with Void Rivals is if they just had G.I. Joe as Star Brigade, right? Just have G.I. Joe in space. Screw being on Earth and the military aspect. Just have them be astronauts that are, you Duke and Roblox. There already a bunch of toys, and there's a fair amount of comic history there already. Just make them Star Brigade.
That's great.
Because
if the Lunar Tricks Empire shows up, it's like, no, we're already on an alien planet. So yes.
Right.
But if Hasbro were to say to Hama right now, or if the editor at Skybound were to say to Hama right now, like, okay, in a couple issues in Real American Hero, do Star Brigade, right? I'm sure he would do a good job. That's not quite the story I want to read. So that's a great point, Josh.
Yeah, it could well happen eventually. There's some interesting quotes from Kirkman when he's been describing, his vision for the universe, and one of them is about how will the different books cross over, and he said, well, Void Rivals takes place in deep space, so a lot of the references are going to be Transformers related. There's not a lot of G.I. Joe characters that are exploring the cosmos. Daniel Warren Johnson's Transformers book is very much an Earth-based book, so you'll start to see how the G.I. Joe books will unfold from that. It's kind of Void Rivals leads to Transformers, Transformers leads to G.I. Joe. We also want to maintain the integrity of G.I. Joe's. It's never going to feel just like a Transformers spin-off or offshoot or anything like that. We love G.I. Joe as much as we love Transformers. We're definitely going to give it its moment to shine. As this universe unfolds, you'll see how it all makes sense and how we're integrating all of these characters together. And he says as well that there'll be other plans for G.I. Joe Transformers, G.I. Joe and Transformers that don't involve the Energon universe. So without any of the crossover happening at all. So there'll be all sorts of flavors. And Kirkman also describes, this is now ING interview, he was asked, is it the heart of the Energon universe or just the way in? And he says it's just the way in. We're just designing things that Void Rivals leads to Transformers and leads to G.I. Joe, but each book is going to be its own separate thing. The G.I. Joe line of books will be more interconnected. There'll be elements of G.I. Joe appearing in Transformers, elements of Transformers appearing in Void Rivals, and it's possible that at some point in the far future, all of these things will get together in a cool way. So it's like sort of seeding these ideas between books, and then, much as we're seeing with the Marvel universe and the Star Wars universe as well, I imagine there'll be, everything will eventually head towards some massive giant crossover where everything is all in one place.
We have seen a version of this before where is it now 6 years ago, right? At IDW, the Transformers books are chugging along, the G.I. Joe books are chugging along, not Hama's book. And a couple of writers and editors there realize that they could stitch those two together and the timeline basically works. And they could also grab the licenses for the other 5 or so Hasbro brands and make this larger Hasbro-verse, combined universe, Revolution-verse. And so the books for like a cycle of, 3 years? For a cycle of
probably
2 or 3
I think
years.
it ended in 2018.
Okay, so those books each had their own storylines, but every 8 months or so, they came together for a miniseries, right? There's Revolution, there's First Strike, and then there's Unicron. And
there's also Revolutionaries.
Right, and Revolutionaries is the bridge from Revolution to First Strike, and is a way to have a monthly book where like sort of one character from each of those brands is like a team. And and I think after the sort of large scale of Revolution, that was everyone, right? First Strike was very specifically a G.I. Joe and Transformers story, right? And then and then you start to, everyone realizes that Transformers is the biggest seller of all these, right? So there's like the Transformers ROM miniseries, which replaces a ROM series. And there's the Transformers Visionaries series,
Yep.
which is certainly going to sell better than a Visionaries series. And Unicron, which is where it all ends, is mostly a Transformers story. And if you sort of squint or like blink every few minutes, you can cut out all the like cameos from like Matt Tracker and Rom and a couple Joe characters. So we have seen this before. And I don't know that I've talked to a lot of G.I. Joe comics readers who really, really liked all of that stuff. And there were a lot of books and they were all $4. So it got expensive and you didn't have to read them all, but I'll tell you, having read them all, it was a lot of fun.
It was. I agree. I read them all too. Yeah.
And the difference is that you didn't have a Robert Kirkman. And I can't stress enough these two ideas that have been rattling around in my head in the last couple of weeks, which is that every single Skybound book looks amazing, right? Design, right? It's like this inside front cover, right? This logo, right? It's like this logo is about two factions and what's happening to the logo. It's divided in half and it's different colors on either half. And then it's sort of coming together where these two letters that are the same, if one's inverted, are like sort of like bouncing off each other with like an energy lightning thing. Like that's good design.
Yeah.
And I don't know what this font is. It looks like Brock, but maybe it's based off of Brock or maybe it's a different font. But this is a really elegant logo design. And that's
and
just the logo. And I'm not saying any of the IDW logos were bad, but like every single thing about a Skybound book always looks good. And the final issue is always looks as good as the first issue. It never falters because like they're running, there's got deadline troubles or like someone helps draw the final issue, like the last page isn't colored as well as the first page. So that's one point. So I'm really confident that how all these books are going to look. Sorry, Josh, you want to jump in?
Well, I was just saying regarding like your logo talk, look, I mean, everyone has a different color.
Yeah.
So they didn't just, G.I. Joe is the exact same. Transformers is generally the exact same logo every time. This red, white, and blue and flags and the block letters of Transformers. But like with this, I think every cover, I'm looking at them right here, I think every cover has a different colors. You know what I mean? Like, so they weren't, again, that's design as you were talking about. And I think that really makes it nice when you look at all of them. So yeah, to back up your point, it is a very well-made book, no doubt about it.
And then the second point, which I can't stress enough, is that Kirkman is such a big deal because he writes comics. He's written a lot of comics. They're all good, right? And some of them are great. And I think there are people out there where like Kirkman's their favorite writer. And then this comic, like most comics over time sell less, or they like standard attrition is that issue number 1, let's forget variant covers for a minute. Issue number 1 sells like this much. Issue 2 sells half as much of that because people try it out and don't come back. Stores buy extra because they want to, be ready if it's really good. Issue 3 sells less than 2. Issue 4 sells less than 3. Issue 5 sells less than 4. And then a book's circulation tends to stay about the same after issue 5. And over time, it tends to go down a little bit slowly because just people drop off, right? And if you think like, well, I don't drop a book after issue 5, just ask like your random friend, like how many Harry Potter books they've read. It's like, do you know people who've read all of them? You've probably met a ton of people who've read the first one and then fewer who've read 2, right? In the 3, like it just, or like pick any streaming series, right? It's like we've all started a bunch of series and then some of them we finish because we don't have infinite time. So The Walking Dead bucked that trend in a really surprising way, and sales went up, and sales kept going up. And then the graphic novel collections sold really well. And then Skybound did those 50 issue compendia, which they didn't invent that format, but they really popularized that format. And those sold like crazy at comic book stores and bookstores. And because it's such a good deal, even though it's really heavy, right? And then the TV show, right? And it wasn't like, oh, a comic book became a TV show. It's a comic book that no one had ever seen anything like that before becomes a TV show that no one has ever seen anything like, right? It's like, because we're all used to zombie stories ending after 2 hours.
Right.
And this is the zombie story that never ends, right? Like Walking Dead is so innovative in that way. And like, yes, the comic eventually ended, the show has eventually ended, but you know, for like more than a decade, they weren't. And it didn't just become a show, it became a really good show that was really popular. And like, that was the cultural zeitgeist. People were talking about that show when it started. And then it gets 2 spinoffs, right? And so you have this guy who's written a lot of comics and who has written good comics and is really popular, and his comics sell. And he is not an Image founder, but the remaining Image founders invite him to be, in effect, an Image founder. Can't be a founder. So he's a partner, right? And he's an executive producer on these shows. You guys know that movie Renfield with Nicolas Cage, and is it Nick Holt, the guy who played Beast?
He plays a Dracula or something.
Yeah, so Nicolas Cage plays Dracula. That's a Skybound production, and Robert Kirkman generated the story.
Oh.
Right? And so IDW did a really good job with G.I. Joe and Transformers overall, right? Like, good looking books, good stories, and a lot of different kinds of books. And but that was like a regular publisher with like editors and writers and artists, right? And now you have a Robert Kirkman who's like, there's sort of no one like him in comics. Like, he's sort of like Eastman and Laird as one person, or like Stan Lee and Todd McFarlane as one person,
Right.
And this is the guy who goes to Hasbro, right? And again, it's not just him, it's a company, right? Like, read the masthead. Skybound has several employees. This is the guy who goes to Hasbro and says, I want G.I. Joe and I want Transformers. And then someone says it's him or it's Hasbro, or they come to it together. Kirkman is going to write a book with all new characters that Hasbro owns, because
I saw that too. You know,
can you go full screen on me? Void Rivals is a trademark of Hasbro and used with permission. Hasbro. I'm just reading that one sentence of Indicia, and I don't know how the deal actually works. You know, how much Kirkman gets paid, how much he paid for the license. And again, it's not him, it's the company. I don't know if Hasbro wants to make Void Rivals toys. I don't know if this, you know, story is going to, I don't know anything, but this is really different. A lot of it is very similar to what IDW did with a shared universe, but it's really different in a lot of interesting ways. And even if you don't like G.I. Joe meeting Transformers, even if you don't like having quote to buy a lot of other books to get your G.I. Joe druthers, like this is a big deal. This guy.
And this is yeah, like as you say, this is Hasbro and Kirkman coming together, and he's saying, I'm going to create you a brand new universe with a whole new set of characters. Me, the guy who, you know, did that thing, Walking Dead, and that other really sort of successful thing, Invincible. And I'm going to create you some great IP that you can actually use. So, are we going to see Void Rivals, you know, cartoon? Are we going to see a Void Rivals film or toys in conjunction with Hasbro down the line? Kirkman said, I'm so excited to see Zertonians and Agorians being mentioned alongside Cybertronians and Quintessons. I can't wait for you to see how Duke, Cobra Commander, Destro weave into this world seamlessly. As this series progresses, you'll get to see the Sacred Ring, discover a whole new cast of characters that resides there, as well as a ton of familiar faces that will crop up along the way when you least expect it. The series continues my goal of bringing new ideas into this world while allowing me to play in the sandbox I've loved for many years. So he's not going to just be there to pick up Hasbro's existing toys and play with them. He's creating and really expanding the existing Hasbro universe as we know it into this new thing, the Energon universe. So it's very exciting.
and obviously he's a guy who can create universes, right? And I don't know when it was a long time ago, but Hasbro had this whole bragging thing where we brought all these cool writers into a writing room, and they were going to make these universes and books. I don't know, maybe right around the time Rise of Cobra came out or whatever. But so Hasbro's tried to do this, but like I don't think they had the right people. But then maybe Kirkman maybe he did a little bit of research and said, "Hey, look, IDW's license is expiring. Hire me or give me the deal or whatever." You know what I mean? And in 2021, when IDW announced that they were ending, and then so he's had like a year, almost maybe 2 years to work on it, which is also possible that Hasbro's had 2 years to build toys for whatever he's doing. You know what I mean? IDW finished their run in December, but it doesn't mean that he wasn't already working on it or something like that. They were just finishing whatever their deal was, and then his deal started. But
I wouldn't.
He's had a long time to work on this stuff.
I wouldn't go. I think from a getting ahead of schedule perspective, it's fun to imagine Skybound and Hasbro collaborating and working on this going back many, many months. But from a legal perspective, IDW's license, we think, ran through the end of 2022.
Right.
Which means Skybound's license did not begin until the beginning of 2023. So, if Kirkman felt really confident, maybe he was writing a bunch of these scripts and having his company hire artists and writers to do these books. But they may not be sort of as ahead on this as we think.
What if 2 or 3 years ago, Hasbro actually created the whole Void Rivals concept and was trying to shop it around to sell it behind the scenes? And so this is because Hasbro owns it. Again, maybe it came out of those writers' rooms and stuff like that. They were trying to figure out what to do with the crossover universes and all that stuff. So maybe this is a Hasbro-driven thing to start with, hence why they own it. And then they hired Kirkman, and Kirkman's like, hell yeah, I get to do a whole new universe. I mean, it could be that way. We're thinking that Kirkman started, but what if Hasbro started it?
I think that's possible, but less likely.
I mean, Kirkman's the idea guy, and if you want someone creating lots of ideas and characters and stuff, he's the guy you'd want to be leading that. If in terms of the Hasbro aspect, I think their guiding hand would be more along the lines of, we're looking for pitches and would like you to pitch to us. And when you're creating that pitch, think about how that shared universe concept might work. And so if they were going to sort of be leaning into that shared universe, it would be probably less about, these are the characters you need to use that we've created already and do something with them. It'd probably be more like, we want to do something exciting with a Hasbro universe.
Right.
How would you approach that?
1982, where they're like, okay, here's the toys. Hammer, make your characters out of them. It's a blank toy with no name or nothing. And then they're like, maybe they already have some toys already, and they're like, hey, Kirkman, here's your toys. Make your story. And then it evolves along the lines of Kirkman makes up like the Baroness, just like Hammer did, and then they make a Baroness toy, or vice versa. They're like, here's Blowtorch, go do something with Blowtorch, and then he throws them in there once or something like that, so maybe it's a combination of both like that, you know what I mean? Like where it really is a Hasbro, because the more I think about it, when you look around, like they're really pushing this cross universe, but they want to sell toys.
Here's why, Josh, here's why I don't think that Hasbro has been working on Void Rivals toys. Because no one knows what Void Rivals is yet, and no one cares about it.
No, I know.
And developing toys is so expensive, and Hasbro's pretty cautious about that. It's like they're sort of making like surefire hits. They keep making another Duke, another Cobra Commander, another Bumblebee, another Optimus Prime, and they're doing less of the obscure characters and new characters.
Right.
So I'm sure everyone is thinking, maybe Void Rivals toys. But like it would cost so much money for Hasbro to make a Void Rivals toy or toy line for something that is sort of like it's only existed for a week.
Right.
So,
But it
okay, is it
certainly-
possible that there's some like stealth San Diego Comic-Con exclusive coming next month that's like a G.I. Joe figure that's recolored with a new head as a Void Rivals figure, and I'm wrong and you're right? I think that's possible. I think it's a ways off before we see Void Rivals toys. I think Hasbro is going to let this universe
right. Take off.
organically
Yeah.
build for 6 months at least before sort of encouraging us to spend even more money on this universe.
And
Well, yeah.
the-
Again, it clearly is Hasbro's approach right now. You know what I mean? Like, let's build. They want to build a universe. Everybody does. Marvel's the only company that's really successfully done it. All these other, the monster universe with Universal and DC's a mess, and you know what I mean. All these different companies have tried it, and Marvel's the only one that succeeded, and Hasbro's starting it. You know what I mean? So, it's all about, for them, it's selling toys and having their brands be popular. So, and they're giving us Hammer's 301 and beyond, so they're still giving the comic guys the same stuff. I'm sure it'll be interesting beyond that, but that's a whole other story. Well, but they're still giving us that. So I don't know. That was just my original thought when this was coming out. I'm like, and then all of a sudden, I went and saw the movie the day after Joe Fest after learning about this, and I'm like, oh my God, like they're totally going for, crossing over everything. So
yeah, I mean, only one issue in, and I think that they probably could do a better job with the Void Rivals movie if they get the right people on it compared to some of the Transformers and G.I. Joe movies. But getting back to the comic, it's great that we've got Kirkman on it, and he's one of the best writers there in comics. And what I found was that we've gone into this blank, not really knowing or expecting a huge amount. And he's built this world, and it's sort of been done very deftly. There's a lot of back and forth in the dialogue, and sort of seeding very skillfully concepts from that world, talking about the rivalries between the two races, that interplay with his hand droid and all these kind of things. So we've had an exciting kind of issue with the crash landing, this confrontation between these two characters, them, working together to sort of try and build these ships. And through all of that interplay, somehow we sort of started caring about these characters, caring about the universe that they're in, and beginning to sort of stitch together this concept of this rivalry between their two cultures, and the mystery of the fact that actually underneath their helmets they look like they're basically the same, and leaving it, as Kirkman is wont to do, on a great cliffhanger, which makes you want more. And I certainly, finishing this issue, it did make me think, okay, we've got Jetfire in it, he's left, that's okay. Will G.I. Joe, will Transformers be in the next issue? Maybe, I don't know, but actually, I don't mind. This is a great comic, and I'm excited to read the next issue, regardless. So my question, I guess, is for Josh as a hardcore Joe fan, not knowing whether G.I. Joe might ever appear in this comic, and probably not in issue 2. How does that make you feel about collecting it? Are you still all in just because of this shared universe concept, or do you think that you'd ever be on the fence and go, maybe I won't, I won't stop keep on collecting this?
Well, as a G.I. Joe completist with a massive G.I. Joe collection, like I never can have enough G.I. Joe. So that means I'll probably keep getting it. But back to the IDW continuity that Tim was talking about earlier with like Revolutionary, there was a Transformers comic called Lost Light that never ever even made it to Earth. and it was part of that universe, and they tied it in, and I stayed with it for a little while, and I ended up getting like one issue. At first I was getting all the covers, and I really faded because it never ever even got close to tying in. So I have like the whole last half just one, but the first few issues I got every cover, and then I was like, well, this is pointless. So like if they never really get to G.I. Joe, which there's no way they're not doing that, but you know, unless I guess unless the space, if they never go to space or whatever, then I might peter out, but I probably won't. I mean, it's exciting to me. I'm very excited about all this new stuff and things. I mean, as much as you know, I love the Larry Hama stuff, and you know, hopefully he does make it to number 400. You know what I mean? It'd be awesome. But you know, there is a time limit on his stories there, and now we have a whole new universe, and so we get best of both worlds. That's
Yeah,
you know,
and there is something exciting about it just being new and different, and not knowing what on earth to expect as well.
I want to offer two counter views. I liked everything about this comic, and I do like the two leads' costumes, but I do think their costumes are missing something. I mean, they've got these cool masks and they've got these cool hand things and glove things. Their costumes, I mean, I don't know anything about their cultures, but you know, flipping through the issue, their costumes seem to each be missing 1.5 things, and I don't know if it's like one more bandolier or like strap on their legs or a backpack. I sound like a G.I. Joe collector, right? I think I need one more color or one more sort of identifier in the way that, like, here's an analogy, right? If you imagine the Jim Lee era of X-Men, Cyclops' costume is, I think, a modified Shield costume, right? When Nick Fury shows up in like Uncanny 274, Nick Fury's wearing like blue spandex with lots of white straps on it. And Cyclops has the same blue and then his yellow straps for X-Men #1. But Cyclops has his cool visor and the thing on his chest, right? The red X-Men logo over his left pec comes down from the shoulder, crosses over his right pec. If you compare those two guys, Nick Fury, drawn by Jim Lee in 1991, and Cyclops, drawn by Jim Lee in 1991, Cyclops' costume has enough. It's got some identifiers. Nick Fury, I know he's got an eye patch and a stogie and some gray hair, but from the neck down, I like that drawing, I like that costume, but that costume isn't exciting. And so there's my analogy. I look at these two guys, these two characters in Void Rivals, and I want them each to have one more thing going on in their costume. So that's my small moment. What are you holding up, Josh?
The one where they're both together on the full size. So you know, yeah, I mean, there's very similar, and I think maybe that's on purpose due to the story. You know, but you know, there. You're right. They don't have the Robert Atkins gear artwork aspect.
And looking at their costumes, looking at their costumes as well, they're you know, the detail of the costume is missing like a logo or some iconography or like a symbol, and we often sort of, as G.I. Joe fans, are expecting to see something like that. Like an awful lot of the G.I. Joe costumes has got very striking that you can immediately lock onto. And
not just a G.I. Joe fan, but you know, comics fans. You know, it's like Darth Vader's face and the control panel on his chest, or the X-Men logo. I think this is starting to happen a little bit with the green sort of, it's like shaped like the letter U on what's her name? The Zertonian?
Solera or something.
Solera.
Like
so she's got Solia. So she's got something, and then the guy has in a couple panels he has a circle emblem on his left jacket pec. So there's starting to be something. Anyway, okay, so that's a small thing. after this comic came out, I talked to my manager at my store and my 3-day-a-week guy. I talked to Jesse and Dave, or I guess I talked to Jesse, and Jesse told me what he thought and paraphrased what Dave thought. And it was this. I was like, what did you guys think of the comic? And the reaction was, well, there are these two people trapped on a moon or an asteroid or whatever it is, a planet. And they have this cooperation and conflict. And then this transformer shows up and leaves. And that feels like it sticks out like a sore thumb and is a weird tease and doesn't lead anywhere. It's not like he stays and helps them get off. It's not like they turn him off and use his fuel and they get away. He's there for 3 pages and then he leaves. Like, what, Cybertron? Goodbye. And so to my 2 employees who are not big, crazy Transformers fans, this felt like it sort of stuck out, and it didn't really add to the story. And maybe your counter, Mark and Josh, is, well, it gave them the idea to like try and reconfigure their own equipment. And I think my 2 employees would say, yeah, that's not enough. So it felt for them tacked on. And Dave, I think, said like, oh, I don't want to read this anymore. They're gonna be Transformers walking around. And Dave doesn't dislike Transformers. He really likes Beast Wars and Beast Machines, so he can stay. But terrible joke. Dave's great.
It's all generational.
But
my
my
counterpoint, Tim.
I want to be aware that actually Dave's older than me, and he really likes Beast Wars and Beast Machines. I just want to be aware that there may be some Kirkman fans out there who aren't necessarily G.I. Joe or Transformers fans who thought they were getting another, Oblivion Song, Outcast, Walking Man. And they read this and they're like, wait, what? Oh. And so we 3 can be really excited. We should be patient and kind to sort of like people who aren't Joe and Transformers fans who might be like, I don't know about this.
Yeah, one of those G.I. Joes and Transformers ruining this new universe.
and I'm completely biased, and I was so excited. And Jesse says, I think the scene with Jetfire doesn't work because he leaves. And I thought, I think you might be right, but I can't find it in myself to agree with you.
But also this is one issue with something like 20 pages, so you can only do so much in the space of one issue, and I would bet that that Jetfire will be back. I would expect he'll be a part of a bigger story.
Is the counter here
probably
that? So, putting on my manager Jesse's cap for a minute, is the counter that this first issue tried to do too much, and Jetfire is one thing too many, whether or not he's going to be back? Because, of course, we're reading this as 20 or 22 pages of a larger story, but it does need to function as a first issue on its own. And it certainly did for me, but I'm ready to be catered to.
There's a story that Kirkman tells about creating Invincible, and this is a bit of a spoiler for people who haven't watched the cartoon or haven't read Invincible, so just skip ahead 30 seconds or whatever. Essentially, one of the big twists and one of the things that makes Invincible so exciting is that Invincible's father, Omni-Man, is a superhero very similar to Superman, but he ostensibly is a baddie. And that's simplifying things. And Kirkman was going to, very much thinking, I'm going to be doing some world building. I'm going to be talking about this new world, this new lead character and becoming a superhero. And this turn, this plot twist, maybe I'll get to that in year 2, issue 15 or something. And, a fellow creator said to him, you're not going to get to issue 15 without putting in this big idea early. You're going to be cancelled by then, or people will have stopped reading. You're going to have to bring that way forward, and that is what he did. So part of this Void Rivals and part of the marketing and impact of it is that it's the new Energon Universe. And I think if he didn't have anything in it in that first issue, people would have turned off. So those people that they're wanting to get in as part those Transformers fans, those G.I. Joe fans.
So playing devil's advocate to that comment. All right, so if you jumped ahead because of the Invincible spoiler, you can come back. Right, we're talking again, and it's open. Instead of 4 pages, 4 precious pages, and again, I love this comic. Instead of 4 precious pages with Jetfire, what if it had been half a page where they find like an Autobot sigil and they say, "What's this?" And then they keep going with their fighting, and they get the idea to use their tech and their right, and then you get 3.5 pages back for these 2 new characters. But yes, I think you make a good point that if any sort of Kirkman fans who aren't necessarily Hasbro fans read this and now they're out, well, it's only been 1 issue, and they're like, well, I tried a first issue and I don't want to follow it anymore, so I'm out. It's not like they invested 11 issues and then Optimus Prime shows up and they're like, wait a minute, I've been here for a year. How dare you?
Absolutely.
Well,
the other thing,
my guess is that the pull list of comic shops all over the place when this announced all got phone calls saying, I want Void Rivals in my box, and they were Transformers fans and G.I. Joe fans who would have never put it in their pull box. So, that means probably issues 2 and 3 might actually go up more because there's these 2 new fandoms in there. I mean, there's probably 10,000 G.I. Joe fans who buy every G.I. Joe book, and they might not buy every cover, but they're buying every book. So there might be 10,000 extra people who said, I want it in my pull box, for just G.I. Joe.
I know that at our store after this reveal, my manager and I did a quick, head to head. Oh, we should cross this to our Transformers subscribers. It's like let's pull issue 1, put it in their file, in their bag, in their box.
Right.
Let's send them an email like, oh, had you heard of this news? This is going to have Transformers in it. We're going to subscribe you to it. Do you want us to not subscribe you to it?
And they all said yes, probably, right?
People take a few days to get back to us when we send that kind of email.
Right. But ultimately, I mean, I think that's probably what's happened. So issues 2 and 3 will have, higher pull box sales, at least.
Yeah, I think that's a reasonable assumption.
Yeah.
Shall
because
we?
A lot of people will have missed it. Yeah, for sure. All of those people who didn't realize the wider context and for this surprise reveal, and now they've put it on their list. I wanted to mention just one other thing that I'd noticed because we talked about Transformers Fire in the Sky. The other parallel I've heard people mention is this Enemy Mine.
Yeah.
So Enemy Mine is a 1985 science fiction film directed by Wolfgang Peterson. It's based on a novel of the same name. It stars Dennis Quaid, who also deals with aliens later on in his career as the president, doesn't he? And Louis Gossett Jr. as the alien soldier. They become stranded together on an inhospitable planet and must overcome their mutual distrust in order to cooperate and survive. So just wanted to point out that parallel there to this new story.
Didn't Louis Gossett Jr. win his Oscar for that film?
Really?
No, I think he won for the Officer.
No, Officer and a Gentleman, right? Of course.
That seems more Oscar worthy, to be honest.
Didn't Dennis Quaid go on to be a G.I. Joe character himself in a movie? Man, I sure wish we could pull Dennis Quaid out of that G.I. Joe movie and put him in a really, really good G.I. Joe movie. Because I really like Dennis Quaid as a G.I. Joe actor character. Yes.
See, I think just goes to show I've scrubbed my mind of some of these memories.
Yeah. And honestly, I remember seeing that movie, I think in the theater, but I definitely watched it on video quite a few times thinking it was pretty awesome. So but I hadn't even thought of that in regard to Void Rivals. So I think that's actually probably maybe in Kirkman's brain up there somewhere along with all the rest of us.
Yeah, even if not conscious, then the subconscious away there somewhere. I think the similarity to Fire in the Sky is definitely a little Easter egg, but that one, who knows. I saw someone make this interesting point when commenting on the book. They said that Transformers and G.I. Joe is particularly in the cartoons, this very binary war of a constant battle between the good guys and the bad guys. And in Void Rivals, we're kind of introduced to that, of these two warring factions. But at least in the first issue, they're already deconstructing the idea that they could somehow find common ground and work together, even possibly the races will take a little bit longer to turn around.
I mean, in the After Action Report books, for all 3 volumes, I've tracked the crossover history between Transformers and G.I. Joe, Marvel era, DDP era, the Hasbro stuff in the early 2000s and late 2010s, and then in the volume 3 it follows up and it deals a little bit more with the IDW continuity, that crossover. So I mean, it's a long history of crossover with this stuff, and mixing everything in, so it's there.
In the way that Mark, to your last point, that we are not meeting these 2 new characters in their big like binary war battlefield, it's sort of like, get ready, G.I. Joe cartoon fans. It's sort of like if your first episode of G.I. Joe were the 1986 episode In the Presence of Mine Enemies, where Slipstream, pilot of the Conquest, and codename Raven, a Stratoviper who is female, have to work together separate from the larger G.I. Joe Cobra conflict on some kind of like base out in the ocean, where I think there's a monster and they have to work together to survive. I think it's a Dr. Mindbender experiment that goes awry, and the episode is a little bit separate from the larger, Joe and Cobra tanks and planes smashing it against each other. So kind of an enemy mine right there in the animated world of G.I. Joe.
Quote of the week, 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 quote of the week.
Yeah, I was just going to say my favorite line of dialogue this week was from Handroid, Drat.
Very good.
My favorite line it's from Jetfire, and he goes, "And is that wind erosion? But that would mean I've been stranded here for millions of years." He can determine that he's got wind erosion.
That was great. I did love that moment.
My favorite line of dialogue is not dialogue, it's copy, it's text. At the bottom of the ad on the inside back cover, the artist for the Duke miniseries is identified as Tom Riley. And even though some things had been spoiled for me in the days right before I read this comic, that one, I think, Mark, even a message from you that I started to read and then said, no, I'm gonna read Mark's message after I finish the comic, because I think he's including photos of the ads at the end. That was my favorite printed words in this comic, because Tom Riley is such a good artist, and I did not think that a Tom Riley would draw G.I. Joe, and in December we're gonna get it.
Nice.
Yeah, I mean that this is the most exciting page of the book, right? The very one of the very final ones with Optimus Prime on it, because Transformers from Daniel Warren Johnson is very exciting in itself. That's October, but we've got the first 2 G.I. Joe titles. Duke issue 1 by Joshua Williamson, who's a big deal in DC Comics. Tom Riley, who's a great up and coming, exciting artist from the likes of Thing from Marvel, and Cobra Commander 1 from Joshua Williamson again. So yeah, keeping things consistent, which can be good. World building, and Andrea Milana, who is more of a newcomer, but based on what I've seen, looks very good. And I'm sure they've picked this person because they've got very exciting art. So good big things, and these books, obviously December 2023 and January 2024 will be our first brand new Skybound Energon Universe G.I. Joe books.
Mark and I have spent many minutes in the last year talking about the end of the IDW era, the transition, not knowing, and the beginning of whatever comes next. And someone asked us recently, was it worth the wait? And yes, it was. The reveal.
It's really only been 6 months since we, December, you know what I mean? Since we had the number 300. So it really hasn't been that long. It's just been a long time since we knew that the publisher was.
But also considering that for 15 years, I have had a weekly or twice monthly dose of G.I. Joe and Transformers comics, and more than one. These 6 months have seemed like quite a stretch.
It's probably the longest stretch since the 90s when there hasn't been a G.I. Joe comic. Because I don't think between Devil's Due and the issue 0 was 6 months, the last issue. Because, issue America's Elite 36 ended, and then number 0 for the IDW, and then in January of, was that 2009? I don't think there was 6 months. So yeah, this would be the longest time frame of which there was no G.I. Joe comic book at all coming out.
And again, not just the wait, but being worth the wait, right? Everything we said in the last 2 hours. What a fun, exciting, crazy reveal. And these upcoming plans seem so exciting.
So great issue. Enjoyed it. I'm going to give it an 8. What's your score, Tim?
Taking into account the surprise and my feelings of childlike delight and joy, at 9.
Big from Tim. And Josh, we don't know what a benchmark score for you would normally be, but what would you score it?
Well, I mean, again, many of the things we talked about, I would say in the 9 or 8, maybe 8.5. Can I do 0.5s?
Yeah, we allow 0.5.
So let's say 8.5, mostly because, again, many of the things are kind of like, where is it going? Where is it going? What is it doing? And it's setting it up. So it would be higher if maybe he did a little bit more setup, but he left us with 2 good cliffhangers and 2 good reveals. That's what I liked about it.
Excellent stuff. So I think we are finally done with Void Rivals 1. If we do another one of these of Void Arrival, it will be covering issue 2. The next one is due out 19th of July, which is not too far away for those who have been patiently waiting months and months for comics. So, and all the while, the countdown to 301 and the next issues of G.I. Joe in the new universe continues. So let's ask where we can find you when you're not talking to me about Hasbro crossover universes. Tim, where can people find you?
Video essays on TV and film at our YouTube page, Atomic Abe Productions. My brick and mortar comic book store is Hub Comics in Somerville, Massachusetts, and I write about G.I. Joe at arealamericanbook.com.
Very good, Tim. And Josh, over to you. What is the main thing that you want to plug at the moment, and where can people find you?
Those are my books that I'm author of with Roger Taft. We've been on this show before. After Action Report, Volume 1, 2, and 3. And then the Command Files, G.I. Joe Character Guide book is also... Those will, the Volume 3 and Command Files will be available probably in September. AfterActionReport.net if you want to buy Volume 1 and 2. And we got a lot more plans coming for 2024 and 25 for more After Action Report books.
Very good. Yes, I do recommend getting on the After Action train because very, very interesting stuff, as well as helping you understand all of the comics that are out there. You can find us over at talkingjoe.co.uk, which is the website that signposts you to all of the places where we are: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. We're on Patreon. Big thanks to all of our backers: Richard, Sam, Jay, Bill, Christopher, Justin, Rob, Brian, and Shane. They're getting early access to episodes as well as exclusive content. But that, I believe, is us done. And Josh, you are welcome to join in with the song as we say that.
Nobody beats Talking Joe, an international podcast.
From the UK and the US.
Excellent stuff. We'll see you later.
All right, guys. Thanks for having me on. I love it. I love talking comics.